Hello viewers, welcome. What's occurring? Apologies for that. Gavin and Stacey is filming its final episode in South Wales at the moment. There's quite a buzz about it. It's not filming near me, but there's lots of stuff on social media, photographs and video clips and stuff. So we're all in Gavin and Stacey mood here in South Wales. Me though, I'm off to the cinema. What a surprise. Today you're going to see Speak No Evil. This is the remake of a Dutch film that came out 2 years ago, an incredibly bleak horror film. Yeah, horror thriller, which has now been remade, directed by a chap called James Watkins. I'll talk more about him later on. So I'm just at the cinema, and I'm going to grab something to eat and a little drinky, and I'll settle down to watch the film, and I'll see you after this lot. Eden Lake is directed by James Watkins. You may remember him from his very grim horror film Eden Lake in 2008. And he also directed 2012's adaptation of The Woman in Black. That's right, the one with Daniel Radcliffe in the unlikely role as a widower with 2 children. This is the first film he's directed in a little while. I think his last film was Bastille Day, which was a fairly run-of-the-mill action thriller starring Idris Elba a few years ago. This film, however, stars James McEvoy, stars Mackenzie Davis. I always get her confused with Mackenzie Crook for reasons that I don't quite understand. Also stars Scoot McNairy and an actress called Aisling Franciosi. It's a remake of a film that came out a couple of years ago, a Danish thriller of the same name, which I saw and found very harrowing, extremely harrowing, very, very bleak and nihilistic. This version isn't quite the same as that. It seems like an unnecessary remake, and it's fairly typical, I suppose, of Hollywood, in that they look at a foreign or European project and think, yeah, we can do this better. I don't know that this is better than the original, but it's very good. It's a very good film. The story here is that we meet 2 families. We meet Ben and Louise Dalton, played by Scoot McNairy. I don't know why I say it like that. It just sounds like that's the way you should say that name. And Mackenzie Davis. They're on holiday in Italy with their young daughter Agnes. Agnes has an anxiety problem. She gets very worried and very stressed. She's got this rabbit doll called Hoppy that she clings onto even though she's nearly 12, and her father's trying to wean her off it, but she gets very stressed out and she has to have breathing exercises, so she's a bit stressed. They meet up with another family, James McEvoy's Paddy and Aisling Franciosi's Chiara. They have a son called Ant. He's about the same age as Agnes, but he has his own particular problem. He doesn't seem to be able to speak. They explain that he was born with a deformity and his tongue doesn't fill his mouth, so he can't speak. The 2 kids get on quite well, and the 2 couples get on quite well. They go out for meals and they talk about each other's lives. But Paddy, James McEvoy's character, he's very full of himself. He's very cocky, very confident, very upfront. He's the alpha male of the 4 of them, really. Anyway, the holiday ends. They both go their separate ways. There's some problems between Ben and Louise. There's been issues in the past that they're trying to get over. She has not exactly been unfaithful to him, but there's been an incident that's caused a schism between the pair. They get a postcard from Paddy, and Chiara invited them down to their place in the country in Gloucestershire. They got this sort of rambling country pile. They decide that it might be nice to get away from the London weather and take a trip out to the countryside with Agnes, which they do. Louise in particular isn't entirely sure about Paddy and Chiara. She sort of, when they're in Italy, there's little scenes where she's thinking, oh, it's a bit odd, the way their behaviour is a bit bohemian perhaps. But in any event, they go to Gloucester and they're welcomed very warmly by Paddy and Chiara. But there are little things that start to happen. When they were on holiday, Louise explained to the couple that she's a vegetarian, she doesn't eat meat. Yet when they get there, Paddy has prepared a luxurious meal of duck, and he sort of forces Louise to take a taste of it just to see how delicious it is. And because she's polite and well-mannered, she bites the bullet and she tastes it, but she spits it out later on. This is just the first of several unusual incidents that make the situation become uncomfortable and difficult, and for the audience, full of tension and this mounting feeling of dread and that something's not right with this dynamic that they've gone into. But the weekend progresses and other things happen, other little niggly things happen between them, and they sort of fall out and they make up again. And the mistake that Ben and Louise make is to stay there. When something happens, they decide to leave and then they have to come back. They stay. It's the power of persuasion that Paddy has. He manages to make them feel guilty for not wanting to be there. I'm not going to say a lot more about the story because there lie spoilers. But suffice to say that as the film progresses, things take a very dark and unpleasant turn. And I really am going to stop there. This is a really good film. It's a really good, quite traditional thriller. And I think for anybody who has seen the original knows what happens at the end. This is more traditional in its structure and in its denouement. And again, I can't say a lot about it because that gives away what happened in the original if you've seen it, or if you've not seen it. I don't want to spoil that. I would recommend you seek out the original, but be prepared for the bleakness. This is more traditional in its structure. It's more of a thriller. It's not just a thriller, though. It's also a little statement about the way that we behave socially with people. It's about social mores and habits and people with their tendency to want to be nice and not to cause offence. Ben and Louise are in a situation which becomes fairly untenable fairly quickly, but they put up with it. They try to make the most of it. They stay when they shouldn't stay. If you will see what I mean when you see the film. And that's what it's about. And there is a particular line of dialogue which I'm very pleased that they kept in this film from the original, which sort of explains how Ben and Louise have found themselves in this situation and why they found themselves in this situation. And that's, you could almost call the film, I can't reveal what that line of dialogue is, but it's a line of dialogue that sort of sums up what's going on here. That this has happened almost organically because of the situation that Ben and Louise have found themselves in and not extricated themselves from. It's a very well-made film. James Watkins is a great director, and it is a shame that he hasn't directed more because he really knows how to draw out the tension in scenes and to build up the characters so that you like characters, you worry about characters, you're concerned about the way things are going. And it builds up that sense of dread and tension, not to unbearable levels because it's a nicely paced film, and when it all sort of kicks off, it kicks off in the last act, particularly as these films tend to do. And then it takes a more traditional route, which isn't disappointing, to be honest, because I like these characters. I like Ben and Louise. Ben is the weaker of the two, funnily enough. I suppose it's a sort of a thing in cinema at the moment that sometimes men are depicted as the weak characters and the women are the strong characters. Bearing in mind that the situation that's caused the unrest between them was sort of Louise's fault, Ben is on the back foot quite a bit and she's the stronger character. But at the end, they both do things that sort of move the situation forward. I think the frustration that you might find in watching the film is that you'll have your head in your hands. Not for too long because you don't want to miss much. But you will despair a little bit at Ben and Louise's decisions. They do some things that could have got them out of the situation a lot earlier, and then they do things that put them back in again and leave them in there. And it is all about society's rules of not wanting to offend people and wanting to be nice and respect. Particularly for Ben and Louise here, they're on somebody else's property, they're on somebody else's home. There's certain things they feel they can do, they can't do. The one thing they should have done is just get the hell out of there at a certain point, but they don't. And that may frustrate you. You may think, well, why are you doing this? Why have you done that? You could have done this. Again, I can't say too much about that because it will give things away. But it works because the performances are fantastic. I mean, James McEvoy is a terrific actor anyway. I've rarely seen him better than this. He's really sinking his teeth into this portrayal of this man, Paddy, who is very powerful, very psychologically manipulative. And my God, he's in good shape. He's very bulked up. He looks, there's a couple of scenes where he's got a sort of a vesty top on and, you know, he's almost Hugh Jackman buff. And he looks forbidding and somebody that you wouldn't mess with. And I think that's part of the story because Ben is a little bit weedy and he's a little bit indecisive. And he particularly, he wants to be liked. He doesn't want to cause offence, which, as I say, causes the entire situation to explode horribly. It's a great film. It's a really good, well-paced, well-crafted thriller. Very small cast, very intimate sort of film. The two kids, incidentally, I must give them a mention. Dan Howe plays Ant, who's the son of Paddy and Chiara. Particularly Alex Leffler as Agnes, who is very good at portraying this very nervous girl who's very emotional, very attached to her mother particularly. It's an excellent film. It's not one of the big blockbustery films of the year, or the big blockbustery summer films. It's an early autumn film, but it's a good... I wouldn't even call it a horror film, to be honest. It's more of a psychological thriller, but it does cross into some dark places. But as I said, I am quite pleased that it didn't go as far as the original Speak No Evil, because I think most people who've seen that will agree that it did go a bit too far in what happens in it. And again, I'm not going to spoil any of it, but I recommend both versions. So go to the cinema this weekend or this week and see this. It's out now. And then if you can find the original, I'm sure it's on a streaming service somewhere. I can't be bothered to find out which one, unfortunately. Really worth looking at. But if you do watch the original, be warned, it's dark as hell. Speak No Evil in cinemas now. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to give it 9 out of 10. Big fat 9 out of 10. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you are new here and stumbled across this video, please like, if you don't mind. Please subscribe as well, even better. Much more important, in fact. Leave a comment down below if you've seen Speak No Evil. Have you seen this version yet? Are you going to see this version? Have you seen the original? What do you think of this version, that version? Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, stay around. I will see you soon until I do. Keep taking the stuff.